Howdy everyone, Pete Daddy here. Today I wanted to talk about the brand new European Super League. Boo! And more specifically, I wanted to talk about how this will impact our FIFA game. Because I've seen a lot of people worried that next year, instead of playing with Harry Kane, we're going to be playing with Barry Train, and instead of Paul Pogba, we're going to have Paul Fraudba, but who knows what it will be. But before we begin, if you're new here, please make sure to subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. So first, let's just talk about what the European Super League is, because I've seen a lot of misconceptions out there. A lot of people think they're trying to replace domestic football, and that's not really what it's about. Think of it more as a replacement to the Champions League, or a Champions League Plus, if you will, where these certain teams, right now there's 12 teams confirmed, or 12 teams that are founding members. They're hoping to expand to 15 and then to 20. So what it will ultimately be is those 15 that are the founding members are going to be guaranteed a spot into this European Super League every year, regardless of results. And so the current formula, for example, in the Premier League, the top 4 finishers get Champions League spots. So that's always a big battle each year. So even if you have a year like this year where Man City is kind of pulled away, you still have those fights for the top 4 spots for Champions League spots, or you have a spot for European football for the Europa League spots. This would kind of circumvent a lot of that, because right now, a team like Spurs is in 7th place, and I think Arsenal is 10th in the table, somewhere in that neighborhood. But no longer will it matter really where you finish for European positions. So a club like Arsenal, a club like Spurs will be guaranteed to be in this competition every year. And what it all boils down to is just the dollar bills, y'all. It's just about money. It's a way to guarantee these clubs to make more money than what they're making from Champions League now. Plus, they don't have to worry about performance. So a team like Juventus this year is kind of having a down year. They may still finish in Champions League spots. They may not, but then you don't even have to worry about it. So the club owners have that guaranteed revenue stream. That's, you always hear from, especially from some of the smaller teams, if they don't finish in the Champions League spots, and maybe they'll have to sell a player, or maybe players won't be as attractive to come there. This will just kind of be a way to circumvent that, to where they don't have to worry about the performance anymore. And me personally, I think that goes against everything of what football stands for. That's one of the big things that draws me to it. You can have a club like Leicester, for instance, that can challenge for top 4 spots. Maybe they're not the biggest club in the world, but they've come around. They've done some smart things, brought in some smart players, and they compete, and now they have the opportunity to play in the Champions League with the biggest clubs in Europe, which I think is amazing, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And if you want to know what Toxic Pete thinks of the European Super League, then here's what he thinks.
Oh my God! What is wrong with this game?
Exactly. What is wrong with this game? But let's talk about what it would do to FIFA. And what I think ultimately this boils down to is going to be how the license will play out. And one of the big things, and when we log into FIFA, we see this screen, and it talks about it being an official FIFA licensed product. But look at the bottom there. The use of real player names and likenesses is authorized by FIFPro commercial enterprises. So I think we may still be okay as far as players go, because FIFA and UEFA have come out very harsh against this. They don't want the European Super League, so there's been a lot of concerns. Well, because it's called FIFA, a lot of people think, well, FIFA maybe controls what's in the game. FIFA doesn't necessarily control the players and the player likenesses. And just to show you an example, for example, we've had this for, I guess, 2 years now, 3 years, I don't know for sure, but it's been a while. If you look at Serie A and you try to find Juventus, one of the biggest clubs in world football, you're not going to find Juventus. They're called Piemonte Calcio. And it's kind of just a joke at first. It's not, for me personally, it doesn't matter as long as I can deal with that. Being called Piemonte Calcio is fine. I can live with it in my brain. I can pretend that says Juventus. It's not that big of a deal as long as the players are there. And that's where the FIFPro license comes in. Same thing with Roma this year. That's not the actual Roma badge. I think that actually kind of looks neat the way they designed it, but that's not the actual Roma badge. So if you're a Roma supporter, you're not treated to the actual Roma badge in game, which again, that's more of a minor annoyance in my opinion. Now, if I was a huge Roma supporter, maybe that would just really impact my decision. Maybe then I would go to Pez instead, who does have the license, and that would maybe impact my decision. But for me personally, it's more about the players. As long as they can kind of represent the team, if you get what I'm saying. So I think based on this license, we are still going to be able to get the players next year. Now, there's been a lot of speculation. They're talking about that the teams are going to be removed from FIFA 22 next year. And so if they are removed and they're replaced with something like that Piemonte Calcio, then I think we will still be fine. And I wanted to read this. I thought this was interesting. FIFPro has actually come out with a statement about this, their European Super League announcement. And it says that this decision leaves players and their unions with many concerns and questions about its impact, not only on the fabric and cultural identity of football, but also more practically on their careers. Football is built on its unique social and cultural heritage, which not only gives it an unparalleled relationship to its fans, but also has created the engine to spread the professional game like no other sport. For this to be sustained, a healthy and solidarity-based cooperation between domestic and international competitions is critical. A new competition undermining this might cause irreparable damage. It is important to note that European football's arrival at this point of potential disruption is a reflection of a governance in which some have enjoyed disproportionate powers and most others, including those at the heart of the game, the players, but also fans, are largely overlooked. And it continues. Threats of a breakaway competition and subsequent concessions to reform European football competitions have shaped decision-making for years. This dynamic has replaced transparent and inclusive discussions on the opportunities of competition reforms for all players, fans, clubs, leagues, and federations. Players continue to be used as assets and leverage in these negotiations. This is unacceptable for FIFPro, our 64 national player associations, and the 60,000 players we represent. We will vigorously oppose measures by either side that would impede the rights of players, such as exclusion from their national teams, which is big. In the best interest of players and the whole industry, we are committed to working with all stakeholders towards decisions that support all levels of the game and repair its existing flaws. So I thought that was really interesting, especially the part where they mentioned, bring it up again, but we will vigorously oppose measures by either side that would impede the rights of players, such as exclusion from their national teams, because that has been one of the biggest things that they've been talking about. FIFA is threatening that any player that plays in the European Super League will not be allowed to play in international competitions like the Euros or the World Cup. So we're talking about this huge power struggle that's going to take place. And part of what ultimately is going to impact our game is how deep are these players, or how deep are these federations, how deep are the domestic leagues, how deep is FIFA willing to go? Because technically the way the European Super League is wanting it is, for example, a club like Arsenal. The Arsenal's right here. Arsenal is hoping to still play in the Premier League, but also play in the European Super League and not necessarily worry about Champions League anymore. I don't think there's any way they could play in Champions League, European Super League, and Domestic League. It would just be Arsenal would then be Premier League, European Super League. Now, will the Premier League dig in its heels? There's been talk that Premier League may relegate Arsenal, may relegate Spurs, relegate Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, and Liverpool down below even what is considered like the FA is but down below League Two, down below our beloved Stevenage boys. So they would be below that if they get relegated. They would be considered like a League 5 squad, basically, or Division 5. So they'd be outside of the FA from those types of competition. So they would have to work themselves back up. Now, whether the Premier League will dig their heels in that hard, because remember, what we talk about, this is all about dollar bills. How much is the Premier League going to be worth if they get rid of Arsenal, if they get rid of Liverpool, if they get rid of Manchester City, Manchester United? And I kind of compiled something here. Let's take a look at what these are. Just FIFA ratings. This isn't necessarily what I think are the best players, but I compiled something down here. I called it the Euro Super L, because we'll talk about that one in just a second. But down here, these are the highest rated Premier League players that would be left if they got rid of the other ones. So you've got Jamie Vardy, Ricardo Pereira, Wilfred Ndidi, Rui Patricio, Jimenez, Schmeichel, my favorite, Adinha, Dubravka, Allen, Wilfred Zaha, Semedo, João Moutinho. So you're not talking about the powerhouses of the Premier League. I mean, Vardy is definitely well known, and and respected and has an image, but is he still, recognizable as Paul Pogba or Rashford or Salah or Mane or Firmino or Aubameyang? So you're talking about losing a ton of star power, a ton of influence. So if the Premier League really digs in their heels and relegates clubs like Arsenal, Liverpool, just all of those that are in there, they are also going to hurt their own brand. So are they really going to dig their heels that much? And you find something like the World Cup. Is the World Cup really going to want to get rid of all of these English players that from the Premier League, or not allow Jimenez to play for Mexico because of his association with the Premier League? That's a bad example. I was on the wrong ones here. But not let Conte play for France. Jimenez, since he's not in a club that is breaking away, and Wolves would be able to play. So. But, a player like Conte not be able to play for France, or Cristiano not be able to play for Portugal. I mean, just think about the implications. So, I don't know ultimately where this is going to go. What I'm mostly focusing on is that I do think ultimately for FIFA, we will have our players in the game. And again, because that comes back to this FIFPro license. The FIFPro license is what is still going to license the players. It's kind of like a players union. And I also thought it was kind of interesting. I kind of put together some players like this could be our starter team next year. We've got so many red links here. Now, what they may end up doing if they are removed from the Premier League. So, for example, right now when you scroll on a card, like on Aubameyang, you see Ing 1, the English First Division Premier League. If the Premier League does dig in its heels, then what I imagine FIFA will do is create either something just called Money. They're not going to call it Money League, but we'll just call it Money League for the heck of it, because that's basically what it is. They create something called Money League. So then maybe all of the Money League participants would then have links. So, for example, people could get really crazy next year, and instead of linking Varane with Mendy, they could link Gomez with Mendy. You could, it wouldn't be the perfect link, but it would still be a link there. So you could link Gomez and Mendy now and get real crazy. So this is just something I kind of put together to show that next year we may have where Messi and CR7 do link, because they would be in part of that Money League, or maybe they would call it Rest of the World or something like that. But I did want to just basically cover the basics of this, that I do feel like with the FIFPro license, we will still have our players, and ultimately that's what it comes down to for me. It's bad enough that they are trying to ruin the beautiful game of football by trying to just input all of this stuff. It's so universally hated too, and I'm sure if they can come to some agreements, especially if they don't expel players from European or international competitions, then I think maybe people could come around to it eventually. But don't mess with our FIFA game at the very least. At least let us have the escape to our FIFA game. Let us have the players we love watching, and hopefully it'll still be Cristiano Ronaldo playing for Piemonte Calcio in. Luckily, they can still even call it Serie A. There was a time they even had to call it Calcio A because they didn't have a Serie A license. So I'm hopeful that we can at least have the players. I think we could maybe survive with that. If they do get rid of them in FIFA, now the next step would be, if they do get rid of these guys in FIFA, then what they're going to have to do is start boosting some of these players like Vardy. Like Vardy's going to have to go to like a 89 rated or 90 rated or something like that. And, we've also got PSG is still holding out as of now. But so PSG does maybe hold the key with Neymar and Mbappe. If they're not in the European Super League, they would become like what everybody has to have. They already pretty much have to have them. But some of the Bayern Munich players, if they don't end up going there, could become super important in FIFA. But there's nothing that says FIFA couldn't boost some of these guys, and maybe they have to do like an earlier promo. Maybe instead of once to watch, we have some type of boosted promo where we have a 91 rated Vardy and an 88 rated Leon Goretzka. Kind of maybe get some of these players some special cards that can maybe replace some of these versions. I don't know. They're gonna have to come up with something if they're not allowed. But I do feel ultimately with the FIFPro license that we'll be able to still have our players in the game. We won't have to have Cristiano Ronaldo. We won't have to have N'Golo Bonte. I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything good on his name. But so instead of having to come up with that, I'm thinking they're still going to be able to have the player likenesses just like they do right now with Juventus and Roma. We still have the players in the game. But anyways, boys, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. If you have any questions, leave me a comment down below. If you have any more information, let me know. But I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.